So now that we've talked about some of the teams that we're excited about going to the season, let's do the reverse side of the coin. Let's get negative for a second. So who this season has disappointed you so far?
I mean, I'm gonna save some of this for our Western Conference predictions because there's one team that's it's hard not to criticize right now. But I guess we could talk a little bit about the Philadelphia 76ers and their
Yeah, I was going to say the elephant in the room, the
yeah
Philadelphia 76ers.
yeah. I mean they look pretty bad. Harden started I didn't actually think they looked like their first game because they lost to the Celtics. I thought they looked fine. And then, losing by 2 points to Milwaukee is like, no big crime. Joel Embiid is having a slow start to the season. He said he had some plantar fasciitis that kind of has like caused him to come into the season a little bit out of shape. But then they went and lost um, to the Spurs, and now things are feeling a little bit yucky. I'm not that stressed about the Sixers. I think like it sucks to start the season 0-3, but I think James Harden looking like he's clearly got a little bit of his first step back is by far the biggest like good thing that the if I was a Sixers fan, that's the first thing that I would be looking for. Tyrese
Yeah.
Maxey has not been shooting the ball well from three, but has otherwise looked as like as speedy and dangerous as ever. Tobias Harris
He
has
was an
been solid.
excellent three-point shooter last year. I think
Yeah,
around
and
40% from three.
and he will be again. Like it's there's like 3 games of shooting the ball slightly below average is nothing to react to. But I think what I never really liked about the Sixers this year was like people kept talking about what a great offseason they had, bringing in PJ Tucker and DeAnthony Melton and some I forget who, I think it was like John Hollinger on Zach Lowe's podcast. Like they've got actual wings right now. It's like since when is Daniel House Jr. like qualifying as an actual wing in the NBA? Like I like Daniel House Jr. I think he's a total like rotation piece in the NBA. But if that's like your actual wing, like I'm still not seeing it. Like PJ Tucker is a power forward and a defensive specialist. Tobias Harris is like a small ball power forward. Daniel House is 6'5". George Niang can't play any defense. I'm like Matisse Tybel can't play offense at all. I'm just like, who is this one actual wing that you have on your roster? Because to me, that's what the Sixers definitely do not have. They've got a bunch of things that are like almost there, and this bench filled with their incredible additions and PJ Tucker, who's starting, are averaging like 10 points per, combining for like 14 points per game, like PJ Tucker and the bench. It's like
Yeah.
it's 15 points per game or something like that. It is rough. Like Montrezl Harrell has barely scored a point. Like um Niang is still shooting the ball well, but he's barely playing. Like it's their benches has come out completely flat and made the off season has cast some doubt on the much celebrated off season of the Sixers.
Yeah, and this was the issue they were supposed to fix was their depth. And I do think DeAnthony Melton is going to play better, but I don't have a whole lot of confidence in the rest of the roster. And I don't necessarily see these massive upgrades that they made. Like you referred to Daniel House, like being celebrated as this awesome pickup. Like Daniel House is fine if he's your ninth man, 10th man. Kind of like a fringe rotation guy.
Yeah,
You're not upset about that, but like
he was great in
he's
Utah
also
last
nothing
year when they
to.
picked him up.
Yeah, he's nothing to write home about. I would say like so. The Sixers have been bottom six in the NBA in both offense and defense so far this season. I do think the offense will turn it around. Maxi and Hart and not Harden, Maxi and Embiid have struggled with efficiency, although their production is still good, and Harden's been great offensively. So, assuming that the efficiency improves for Embiid, especially, they should be a pretty good offensive team. They'll probably finish, in the top 10 or borderline top 10. But it's the defense with me that is kind of been alarming. This is a team that does not get back in transition. And that is a weakness that a lot of teams in the NBA can punish.
Yeah,
And also just the rotations, Embiid, maybe the plantar fasciitis and the lack of conditioning is part of it, but like it's not just him. Harden has been horrific defensively so far, really returning to kind of his like early to mid Rockets days where he just really didn't give effort, half the time on like, not going over screens, just like letting shooters get it open shots or free lanes to the rim. And then also Tobias Harris, who has never been a particularly strong defender, has looked pretty rough so far early on in this season. So I think PJ Tucker helps, even kind of late in his career, kind of riding off into the sunset. PJ Tucker is still a solid defensive piece, but some of their guys that play heavy minutes, I think particularly Harris and Harden, are really concerning defensively.
Yeah, and Embiid step up and anchor a defense. Like you've been,
Yeah,
every year he says he should be the defensive player of the year, and every year it seems like he gets a little bit less try hard on that end of the floor. So it's kind of like, put this defense on your back and give them a solid backline anchor to build off of. I was actually pretty impressed with Tobias Harris's defense last year in the playoffs. Like I thought he actually sort of turned a corner. He was like a good matchup against Pascal Siakam. And he's not a good defender and he doesn't have the tools to be a good defender, but like he's not, they're making him play small forward again, kind of. So that's like, PJ Tucker is 37 years old. Is he going to chase small forwards like every game? Like, I guess it's just sort of, I agree with you that the defense does not necessarily project to, it's going to get a little better than this, but it's, I think, a question mark where I'm not really worried about the offense at all. I think this is going to be a very powerful offensive team. They're going to start shooting the ball well. Right now they're shooting the ball like garbage. And they'll be fine offensively, but yeah, sort of like you say, that's, I didn't have this team as a definite finals contender because I didn't see them as a strong defense.
Yeah, and speaking of lack of strong defense, I'm going to bring up a team that, hasn't been out and out terrible so far this season, but I do think the initial signs are a little concerning. So the Brooklyn Nets played against the New Orleans Pelicans their first game of the season, and they just got absolutely blitzed. It exposed like a true lack of rim protection. Like their starting power forward and center are Kevin Durant and Nicholas Claxton, both of whom are, agile guys who can get to the right spots, but really don't offer much size or much like of a legitimate rim deterrent at all. And the New Orleans Pelicans are not the only team that has a player that can bulldoze to the rim and finish like through contact when you're not providing much resistance. Like Zion might be the worst case scenario, but there's lots of other teams. And I thought that the New Orleans Pelicans were probably the worst team that the Nets could go up against. And then their second game against the Raptors, they went against like probably one of the best. And it's not because the Raptors are a bad offensive team, but it's because the Raptors are a team full of like a lot of tall, like lanky forwards. And that's the kind of personnel that the Nets have as well. So I mean, the Nets looked okay-ish against the Raptors. It still had some defensive breakdowns against a team that they theoretically should be like suited to defend. So,
and Pascal Siakam demolished them. Like he looked like, he looked like Giannis against them. Like he was mowing them over and getting everything he wanted. He was getting to the line. He was scoring around the rim. He was eating them up. They escaped with that win. That was a really close one. They, they had a really strong kind of like opening quarter, and then that one really went down to the wire. And they completely relied on just like Kyrie and Durant.
Kyrie and Kevin Durant making really difficult shots.
And then one pretty lucky one from Royce O'Neal.
Yeah.
I think the game, like the dagger was Royce O'Neal off. I think Fred VanVleet helped off Royce O'Neal onto Kyrie Irving, and Kyrie made the right pass. And I mean, Royce O'Neal's that was the only three he hit that night. He went 1 for 4, but he's capable of hitting 3-point shots. So I thought that was a good win for the Nets. I'm not quite ready to dump on them. They've only played 2 games this season. The first one was extremely embarrassing, and they deserve a place on this podcast where they get ripped up a little bit because that first game was so bad. But it'll be interesting to see them in a couple more matchups, because I think like Toronto's a very good, difficult team. Not the same matchup problem, but they looked quite a bit better and were able to play to their strengths a little bit more. But they barely got away with that one. So
Yeah. I just think projecting forward, like they're missing Seth Curry. Ben Simmons is playing still looks incredibly hesitant offensively.
yeah,
Like I could see their offense getting better. They've been a bottom half of the league offense in the first couple of games, but I do not see the upside defensively. And like no matter how
no,
great Kyrie and KD are going to be, and even if best case scenario happens with Ben Simmons and he returns to being like a transition threat and like a ultimate open 3 point shot creator, and like who knows, maybe the Nets become a top 10 offense. I'm still not sure that the upside with them is there with like how glaring the defensive issues are.
I think
So
the
that that's
offensive,
that's my main concern with them.
yeah, I think the offensive upside is there. Like if I think they could be the number one offense in the NBA, and that wouldn't be crazy at all. Like I don't have them projected to finish there. But I think staying out of the bottom five defensively is going to be difficult. It's funny. I was like there, one of their assistant coaches is Tiago Splitter,
Yeah.
um, old San Antonio Spur, and I was seeing him like standing on the bench, and I was like, they need Tiago Splitter on this team. Like they just
They
need
do.
like one guy who's like 6'10" and strong, and
Yeah.
does no and like just to set screens and make good decisions. Like that's it. Like, and they don't have like the closest thing they have to that is probably Dayron
They run
Sharp, who
sharp.
is a
Yeah.
who's a second year player, and well, some ran it like he's not really in the rotation right now, but I like the Utah Watanabe pickup, just kind of like a
Yeah.
wing that average shooter who like just like hustles and makes good plays. Like there's some upside in this roster. I don't know. I'm not quite ready to be too super pessimistic with the Nets, but I'm not optimistic about them either.
Yeah. I mean, Dayron Sharp's a huge body and he's pretty agile. So theoretically, like could provide some of the rim protection that they need, but like just really not a shooter or floor spacer at all at this point. Although he tries, they just don't go in. But any player like that, I mean, the fit with Nick Claxton is already hard enough, but kind of works because Nick Claxton can dribble and attack the rim a little bit. But someone like Dayron Sharp is just really hard to put out on the floor alongside Ben Simmons. So I mean,
Yep.
it's hard to see Dayron Sharp being a significant part of the rotation moving forward.
Yeah, they feel like they're all like they're a rotation piece away from a lot of their lineups working. And whether they have that on the roster and that will emerge, or whether they need to find another player, which isn't an easy thing to do, I guess, we'll see.
All they need is just like a 7 foot big man who's agile and switchable defensively and can step out and space from three, right? And
Yeah,
they're an
yeah, no,
awesome
no
team.
problem. Yeah, just get Victor Wembanyama.
Yeah. Half the
He's not
teams in
signed
the
with an
NBA
NBA team right
are.
now.
No, that's true.
Go out
Yeah,
and sign him preemptively.